Hello there, world of takers, and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Autoloaders Blitz, and in today's video, I'll be doing my yearly tier list to go over all the changes and how I feel every single tier 10 sits currently in the game in terms of balance. You can see we've got a couple different categories, being broken, super strong, strong, good, workable, and just meh. Broken is really the only category that people can get a little confused on, because a lot of people associate the term broken with overpowered, and in some cases that is correct. But I usually like to use the term broke for the literal definition of game breaking. I feel a vehicle, for example, like the 4005, with the ability to deal 1600 damage in a matter of 4.5 seconds using shell reload boost, is pretty broken and game breaking as a mechanic. I don't think the tank itself is necessarily overpowered in the way that it's going to carry games, but I do think the mechanic it features is broken. Does that make sense? I hope it does, but that's kind of how I categorize that area. So it's two different types of takes that are going to be in there. It's going to be overpowered takes that I think just kind of break the game because of how good they are, but as well mechanics that vehicles have that are also game breaking. The other categories are all pretty common sense. I mean, workable just means it's a take that you can do well in as long as you understand it, but it's worse than the rest. And just meh is just meh. I would never drive a tank in that category unless I wanted to have a bit of fun and didn't really care about my stats. One other thing before I do start ranking these vehicles is I want to point out that at the end of the day, this is just one man's opinion, and there are a lot of you that are going to be watching this video. So just keep in mind at the end of the day, while you may not agree with what I list each of these takes at, it's just my opinion. So let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below and where you would have ranked the vehicles. But with everything aside, let's get straight into it, starting off with the Americans, beginning with the XM551 Sheridan, easily making its way into the super strong category. The Sheridan features just about everything you'd ever want. It's got good DPM for the alpha that it carries at 560 damage per shot. I think it's got like 2500 DPM, which is not bad at all, judging that it used to be about 2300 before Wargaming buffed it. The Sheridan features fantastic mobility after it was recently buffed as well, and it features the most view range in tier 10 as that was also buffed. I mean, the Sheridan is now by far one of the best light takes available because of all the aspects it carries. It's got fantastic heat pen at 340 millimeters, making it the most for all mediums and light takes in tier 10, and the Sheridan is completely covered in spaced armor, making it almost impossible to high explosive unless you're a decently accurate player, knowing where the little weak spots that you can plant pen with the high explosive shells are. Overall, the Sheridan is a really solid tank. It's basically 183 proof because 183 shoot hash on it and don't pen it 99% of the time. The fact that it's got alpha and a DPM and gun depression and view range and mobility allows it to essentially win a lot of engagements. Whether you're fighting a tank like a heavy and you have the ability to out-trade a 400 damage shot for 560, or when you're fighting a lightly armored vehicle and you can slap them for 670 with your high explosive shells. Overall, I think the Sheridan is an absolutely amazing tank, and that is why it easily fits into the super strong category. Up next, we have the American Tier 10 Premium Medium tank, the M60. This is a vehicle that really doesn't get talked about all too much. In fact, I don't even know if I've made a video on the M60 in maybe a year or two, but honestly, there's good reason, and that's because nobody ever really talks about the tank. It's never buffed, it's never nerfed, it's just there. The tank hasn't received PBR, so there's really never been a reason to talk about the vehicle, especially when the M48 tech tree version of the tank exists. Now, even though the M48 patent looks better, judging that it now has PBR, and the tank is really solid, I still think the M60 is a better choice, because first of all, the M60 is more accurate by a bit on its dispersion. The M60 also has more gun depression by 1 degree. The patent sits at 9. The M60 sits at 10 degrees, which makes it very, very flexible. Because of that, plus the fact the M60's turret is 20 millimeters thicker, and its upper plate is at a steep angle, which means when you're hauled down, it's a lot harder to penetrate. All those things added together, I actually think the M60 is a better tank than the Patton. Now, I don't really think it's much of a comparable difference, so I'm putting both of them in strong, because I think both of them are strong tanks. I think the advantages the M60 have are slight, because I should also point out that the M48 Patton has some advantages over the M60. For example, it has better side armor. It's angled like a boat, which allows it to get get a lot of bounces on the side. And while the M60 does have a similar type of hull, it's not as thick on the sides, which allows it to get not as many bounces. As well, the frontal armor on the M48 patent is a lot more troll because of the way the rounded front works. It's a lot harder to penetrate at certain angles. The track wheel might eat a shell, where the M60 is overall pretty easy to penetrate when you are on flat ground. Because of that, I actually think both of the tanks are very, very similar. They both feature really solid guns with 350 damage per shot, some of the best on-movement dispersion in Tier 10, great view range, and, as always, really solid hull-down capabilities. These tanks don't have the best DPM out there at about 3,300, but they're not bad either. They have plenty of DPM to deal with any of the other mediums in Tier 10, so because of that, I just think they're flat-out strong tanks. They're good at almost anything and any situation you get them stuck in, which allows them to be strong. So that's why I really like the American mediums. Next up, we have the Concept 1B. Now, if this was last year, I would probably put the Concept 1B into the broken category, and I probably did. But this year, I'm actually putting it into the super strong. The reason, and I made a previous video talking about this, is mainly because the majority of Tier 10 battles don't last long enough for a vehicle like the Concept to actually make an impact big enough in the battle for me to warrant this vehicle as broken. And that's really the problem that me, Flossie, a lot of really good players that I mess around with have with the Concept nowadays, is just the fact that, sure, it's unkillable. If you're hull down on a map like Dead Rail, you're never going to be killed. But your teammates will be. And on a map like Dead Rail, if you lose medium side, you lose the game. And if you decide, oh, I'm going to drive my Concept to medium side, then you lose heavy side and get flanked. Either way, it's sometimes a really painful situation. I mean, the Concept's got a really good gun, but it just doesn't have alpha. And when there's so many powerful autoloaders out nowadays that just have the ability to clip for 1,1500 and then drive back in the cover and you only hit them for 380 in return, that's really where the Concept is in that iffy area. I still think the tank is incredibly powerful, and I do feel that in some situations the Concept is definitely a game-breaking vehicle. There are some battles that you'll play where you are literally just God. Nobody will penetrate you because you're hull down, and because of that the Concept is very, very strong. But there's also situations where the Concept feels pretty poor because your team just falls apart so fast. Your alpha means nothing, and even though your DPM might be good, you don't really have anything else to show for it. So I really like the Concept. I think it's a fun, fantastic tank, but I just don't think it fits in that broken category anymore. Now, the T95 E6 is also making its way into the super strong. The E6 is amazing. That's really all there is to say about the tank. It features 3,200 damage per minute, which is great, especially when you add on to the fact that if you're like me and running Cali, you have 3,000, or not 3,000, I was about to say 3,074 pen, but 374 millimeters of heat pen, which is insane. You've got accuracy, and while it may not be as accurate as the T110 E5, which we're going to break into in a moment, it's still a very accurate gun on the heavies class. So it's got alpha at 400, it's got accuracy, it's got ridiculous pen, and fantastic damage per minute. And the best part about the E6 is the mobility. Going in at a top speed of 50 kilometers per hour makes it the fastest Tier 10 heavy right now, especially when you take a look at its power to weight being at around 20. So this tank is not only 50 kilometers per hour on a top speed, but it's just as mobile on its power to weight as the average medium tank, which allows the E6 to drive to medium side and easily bully the medium tanks. Add that into the fact that it's got heavy tank hit points and the fact that it has 10 degrees of gun depression, it's insane. I love the E6. It has quickly become one of my best performers in Tier 10 and one of my favorite tanks to drive just because of the capabilities and characteristics it has on the battlefield. I would much rather be in a super mobile heavy like the E6 rather than a hull down beast like the Concept, and I can tell you that for a fact because there's been a lot of games I've been able to carry in the E6 just because of that mobility and sheer DPM it has in Tier 10. Next up we have the T110 E5, and the E5 is a weird vehicle because it's got a lot of really good things going for it, but a lot of really bad things going for it as well. E5's got one of the best guns in the game for accuracy. It's got .299 dispersion, which is insanely good. It's just as accurate as the FV215B. The T110 E5 is 374 millimeters of heat pen, and it's got really solid armor plus reactive, which means you can actually have around 3,000 hit points when you're running it. Because of that, the E5 is pretty solid, but at the same time, it's also not really solid when it comes to the damage per minute, sitting at 2,400. Yeah, I mean, that's not a lot. And if you're running reactive armor and adrenaline to make the most of the consumables the vehicle has, this is an American tank after all, which means its ammo rack is pretty weak. It's right in the front corner, and it gets damaged a lot. The driver dies a lot on the E5, and it gets tracked a lot. So there's a lot of compromise to be had in the vehicle. Because of that, I'm not putting the E5 into super strong. It's just going to go into strong. I don't think it's a bad tank by any means, and I do think it's a very strong vehicle. And you can see that in the comp scene. A lot of the E5s are being used in comp right now. I think that there are definitely options that are just as good as the E5, though. I mean, the concept is still a lot better in almost every single way, apart from the fact of reactive armor, but that's just kind of how it is. Overall, the E5 is a good tank, and it's definitely got a lot of good things going for it, especially after it got PBR, because the turret armor got a heck of a lot stronger. But apart from that, the E5 right now is staying in strong. What else? Well, we got the T57 Heavy. The 57 Heavy is a tricky tank, but I think this is going to be the first vehicle to make it into the broken category. It's a tricky vehicle to really rank, but the reason I'm putting the T57 Heavy into broken is two things. First of all, the 57 Heavy has an incredibly fast interclip, a 2.5 second interclip, which means in 5 seconds it can deal 1200 damage. But that's without shell reload boost. With shell reload boost, it takes you 3.5 seconds to deal 1200 damage. And add that into the fact the T57 Heavy features 3,000 damage per minute, shell reload boost boosting it up to 3,200. Yeah, that's a little stupid. Not to mention the T57 Heavy, and this is the other part, is its armor is troll as hell. I cannot tell you how many times I shoot at a T57 Heavy turret and it hits that little red bar on the side of the turret cheek and it just ricochets. Or the tank turns its turret to look at something or anything. The T57 is one of the most troll tanks. It doesn't matter how good of a player you are at the game, you will bounce a T57 Heavy at least once every 3 or 4 games you fight it, just because of how troll its turret is. And the hull armor as well is pretty troll. There's a lot of spots you can pen on the 57 Heavy's hull, but there's a lot of spots you can bounce. The track wheel as well, very troll on the 57 Heavy. I cannot tell you how many times I shot at the track wheel of the vehicle when it's over angling, and it just doesn't penetrate the tank. Because of that, I feel like the tank is in a game-breaking aspect. I think if Wargaming just made the armor worse, or maybe they made the DPM a bit worse to keep the way that it dumps its damage out, I think it'd be fine. But right now, I think it's got so much going for it that it is a very, very hard tank to contest, especially if you're a pretty solid player using it. We have another American Tier 10 auto-loading heavy tank, this one being the M6 YOH. And for as long as the M6 YOHs existed in the game, I have still been arguing that the double shotgun is what makes it an overpowered tank, at least in one way, and that is absolutely nuking opponents without really having to worry about losing health yourself. For example, let's say you see a T100 LT on the enemy team. Now, the M6 YOH features reticle calibration, which is a consumable that makes your dispersion basically 0. And let's say you see a T100 LT, I don't know, 100 meters in front of you driving at 65 kilometers per hour. You slap on that consumable, boom! Boom! He's down 900 health, you back in the cover, nobody can push you. And there you go, that's how the M6 YOH works. It's got the same alpha as a 183 AP shell, but all the upsides of being a heavy tank. It's got 10 degrees of gun depression, it's got decent hull down capabilities, and while I won't say it has the best armor ever, it's definitely not the worst armor either for what it really carries. The YOH has the ability to actually reverse while being tracked, and even if you didn't think the double shotgun with its 1.71 second interclip was your style, it also features a 3-shell gun that deals 900 damage in total, 300 damage per shot. It's able to deal all that damage in a total of 5 seconds, featuring a 2.5 second interclip. It's got also shell reload boost, which means that you can go from a 5 second interclip to a 3.5. Yeah, I mean, the M6 YOH is just an insanely good vehicle. Both gun options are really good. Even the double shotgun still has 2,500 DPM. It's just that the triple shot with 3,000 makes it look bad. But if you compare the double shotgun on the YOH to the average Tier 10 heavy, it's got really solid DPM still. So that's why it goes into the broken category, specifically because it can deal that 900 damage in 1.7 seconds. Apart from that, I think the tank is in super strong, especially if you're running the other gun. But man, is it a really, really good vehicle, and I definitely am scared of the M6O. I mean, it's my #1 performing tier 10 at like 3,700 average damage, so it's a pretty nasty vehicle. Up next, we have a tank destroyer, being the T110E4. Now, the T110E4 it's an interesting vehicle, and it's a hard one to rank, because the E4 has a really, really good gun. 0.308 dispersion for a 640 alpha damage shot, and 3,000 DPM, plus a traversable turret, which means it's pretty accurate when you're sitting still and trying to hit your opponents, but it's also got the ability to somewhat frontline with pretty solid armor, kind of like an E5. Really, the only bit about the armor letting it down is the hatch on the top. So when you have all these aspects, you got a decent armor profile, you've got okay mobility, a really, really good gun, and fantastic dispersion, it's hard to really rank the E4, but I'm going to put it into the strong category. The reason it goes in the strong is because of everything I just listed. It doesn't really have a downside. I mean, yeah, its armor isn't the best, but it's not the worst by any means, and the gun is by far one of the better when it comes to tank destroyers. Wargaming changed a lot of the TDs in update 9.2 to have a lot better alpha. The E3, for example, went from 640 to 680 damage per shot. But the problem is it lost a lot of its accuracy and damage per minute. However, the E4 actually gained damage per minute and accuracy. So, I mean, one lost, one gained. I think the E4 is great. I think that it's definitely a strong tank if you understand how to work that gun. So because of that, it easily fits into that category. The T110E3 is going to go into super strong. The E3 is just a better E4 in a lot of situations. I mean, sure, you don't have a turret and you don't have nearly as good of a gun, but you still have a gun that hits really hard. 680 damage a shot is amazing. Add that into the fact that the T110E3 also has some of the best armor in the game, period, tier for tier. I mean, if you sit in E3 hull down, as long as you hide the lower plate, almost anything in front of you will not pen you. The only way I deal with E3's hull down is two options. A, I'm in a really, really high penetration tank, which has the ability to butter through my opponents. And at that point in E3, you can actually pen the hull cheeks. However, if you're not in a super high pen tank, and let's say you got 60, 50 millimeters of pen, you're not going to cut through the tank even when it's hull down. Because of that, the E3 really only weakness is shooting HE at the roof of the tank. That's it, and you're only going to deal like 200 damage a shot at that point, where the E3 can just come back and slap you for a 700 roll. I mean, the tank is strong. It's really, really strong. And the only real downside of the tank is its mobility. It is an American tank after all, which means its reverse is absolutely awful. However, it's also got super speed boost, which means if you do get pushed on, you can just use super speed boost to back in the cover. Overall, the E3 is incredibly strong, and it's definitely a super strong vehicle. The Kampfpanzer 50-ton is the first of the German tanks, and it's a weird one. It really is a weird one. It's, on paper, incredibly strong. It has 3,600 damage per minute, making it the second highest DPM medium behind the Leopard 1. The Kampfpanzer has great mobility, going upwards of 60 kilometers per hour. It's got decent gun depression at 8 degrees, and it's got pretty good armor. However, that's all on paper. Once you start using the Kampfpanzer, it's not as good as you'd think. It's, sure, got a great gun when it comes to DPM, but its dispersion isn't great at 0.308. It's not bad dispersion, but I can definitely tell you the gun's a bit wonky. For anybody that's driven the tank, you'll notice it just misses some of the shells that it really shouldn't be. The on-movement dispersion is pretty poor on the vehicle, and the alpha is not a lot, which means when you're fighting the majority of mediums, they'll just out-trade you, especially if you gotta load heat. You're dipping into the 200 alpha realm. So, yeah, I mean, sure, it does have all the DPM and everything, but it also has pretty poor turret armor as well that can be penetrated by a lot of premium shells very easily. So the Kampfpanzer is a weird combination of really good and really bad. And because of that, I'm going to put it into the strong category. I definitely think it's a strong tank, but I don't think it's a super strong tank. I feel like it struggles in a lot of aspects that I originally, when I saw the stats of it, never thought it would struggle with. But then when you pull it out, you're kind of like, eh. So I think it's a strong tank, which is still a good category to rank any vehicle in. I just don't think it's as powerful as the vehicles you have listed currently in the super strong area. Next up, we have the E50M, and yeah, this one is easy, right into super strong. The E50M is kind of what the Kampfpanzer 50-ton wishes it could be. The E50M is faster than the Kampfpanzer 50-ton on power to weight, which allows it to accelerate a lot faster. The E50M has really good DPM, and it's got a decent chunk of alpha. I think it sits at like 340 or 30 damage per shot, which is a nice middle ground. It's not as high as the 105 millimeters like the Leopard 1 carry or the M48 patent carry. However, it's not as low as the 62A and, for example, the Kampfpanzer. So it's a nice combo where you out-reload a lot of the 105 millimeters that deal 350 damage a shot, but you also have a fast enough reload to deal with a lot of the lower alpha mediums that have super high P-shooter DPMs like the 62A. Because of that, I really like the gun the E50M carries. The vehicle's got great dispersion, it's got fantastic armor as well, sitting at 8 degrees of gun depression, an upper plate that is similar to thickness of an E75, side-scraping capabilities, and a turret that you need to load heat to penetrate the majority of the time, and even when you do load heat, it's a very troll penetration because you have to hit the little thin bar that's kind of like this next to the gun of the mantlet. So overall, I really, really like the E50M. It's a tank that I don't play enough, to be honest, but it's a fantastic vehicle and by far one of the best tier 10 mediums in the game right now. We have the Leopard 1, and the Leopard 1 is a weird tank to categorize because it is super strong, but it's only super strong in a good player's hands. Apart from that, the Leopard 1 is terrible. I mean, the Leopard 1 right now is the worst performing tier 10 medium in the game. However, the Sheridan is one of the worst performing tanks as well, and I put that in super strong. So because of that, I'm following the level of how I would rank a Leopard 1. And because of that, I'm legitimately ranking the Leopard 1 in super strong. Like, yes, the Leopard in an average player's hands is not super strong. I'd probably put it in workable to just meh. However, if you're a player like myself or just a decent player that understands how to work the Leopard's capabilities of gun depression with the fantastic accuracy and great DPM the vehicle carries plus alpha, it's an amazing tank. The Leopard, as Wargaming keeps buffing it, has become one of my favorite tier 10s in the game, just because there's nothing to dislike about the tank. It's got mobility better than light tanks on power to weight. It's got a gun better than anything else you'll ever see, especially when it comes to the alpha, the accuracy, and the penetration. The Leopard 1 has everything going for it. The only downside the Leopard has is armor, but that's not really that big of a downside. I mean, I drive light tanks all the time, and I do fine in them, so why would the Leopard get hindered, especially when it's got plenty of gun depression at 9 degrees? So I think the Leopard is amazing, especially because it is the highest DPM tier 10 medium at like 3,000, almost 700. It's pretty strong, so easily goes into the super strong category. The mouse is... It's a weird one to rank, because Wargaming nerfed the mouse on the one thing that it really shouldn't have been nerfed, and that was the gun. The gun was actually decent on the mouse previously. A couple of years ago, the mouse gun would easily shoot stuff on the move because of the fact that its on-movement dispersion was pretty good. However, Wargaming nerfed that, and then they nerfed its traverse speed to make its turn armor a bit better, which also kind of sucks. There's a couple problems with the mouse. The first one that I keep saying over and over, and for some reason Wargaming won't do this, is that the mouse needs an impervious upper plate. This is a tank that weighs in at 188 tons, and the fact that when you are on flat ground against an IS4, or really anything that has high heat pen like a tank destroyer, you can just be buttered through on the upper plate. That's a little stupid. That should be changed. The mouse should not be penetrable on the upper plate. The track wheels on the mouse are like 1,000,000 millimeters thick. The fact that you can shoot through the track wheels on the mouse also should not be possible. Those two things I would change. Turret cheeks can stay the way they are. That's fine with me. I think they're pretty good right now. And when it comes to the mobility of the mouse, also fine with me. I think the gun can stay the way it is if Wargaming just buffed the upper plate. However, I guess we'll see what Wargaming does to this tank in the future. Right now, I think it's in an okay state. But because I'm just going to put it in good. Like, I do like the mouse. And I feel like in my hands, or a really good player's hands, the mouse is a super strong vehicle. But at the same time, I just can't find myself to enjoy the gun, which because of that makes me not enjoy the mouse, which is why I put it into the good category. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. I definitely think there are arguments that the mouse can be used in super strong or strong as well. You know what? I'm going to put it in the strong. I'm changing my mind. I feel like it's still a strong tank, even though it doesn't feature the gun, and its armor is still easy to penetrate. The fact that it just has so much HP and the pushing power it carries, if you understand how to play it, I'm going to put it in the strong. I gave the Leopard an exception, saying that the average player is not going to do well, but I'm going to rank it good because a lot of good players can do well in it. So I'm going to do that for the mouse as well, because I feel like that is a solid argument to be made. The VK92-1 is a weird heavy. It's just like the mouse on weird, because it's I really personally wish the VK72 was good at side scraping. It's a rear-turreted German super heavy, and it's not good at side scraping. It's weird because of that. I've always wished Wargaming would buff the side armor, get rid of the special consumables it has, get rid of the special equipment it has, and just make it good at side scraping. That's what I've always wanted. Unfortunately, they just make other aspects about the tank weird. But I don't know. It's an interesting tank to play. It's got tungsten, which allows its alpha to be at around 700 damage per shot. That's pretty freaking nasty. Add that into the fact the vehicle's got a really solid frontal armor and pretty troll armor in general when it comes to haul down capabilities, but I should also add you can penetrate the turret easily if you're a decent player and you know where to aim. Plus, the VK72 side armor is absolutely awful. It's not like the E100 where it's got spaced armor on the sides. It has none. So it's an odd choice. It also has some of the worst damage per minute in Tier 10. So the VK72 overall, it's a good tank, and I can't really say anything bad about it, so I'm going to put it into the strong category. I think that it's a very capable tank. I don't think there's anything bad about the VK72, apart from that DPM and maybe the accuracy. But to be fair, the E100 features that same exact capability, but the E100, in my opinion, is just a much better tank. In fact, I'll just say it right now, I'm going to put the E100 into super strong. The E100 in update 9.2 became incredibly good. The turret armor got buffed by 20 millimeters, making it 330 thick now. And 330 thick means that mediums will not pen you if you're running enhanced armor. That's really solid. Add that into the fact that the E100 got a traverse speed buff, now sitting at 33 degrees a second, which is like 8 degrees more than the mouse and VK72. That's also really stupid. It means that you can literally turn fast enough to sometimes just bait shells with your track wheel. The E100 has pretty good on-movement dispersion. It's got a nasty alpha, and it's just an overall great tank. It's got a lot of hit points at 2,900. I just think the E100's amazing right now. The current state that it's in is the best state it's ever been in. It's very easy to play for newer players. It's very good to play if you're an experienced player. It is an absolutely fantastic super heavy, and because of that, it easily fits into the super strong category. The VK90, the outlier we haven't talked about yet, is another really good German tank. A lot of the German super heavies are similar on their playstyle, except for this one. The VK90 features a rear turreted design, and unlike the VK72 that does not have side scraping capabilities, the VK90 does. It's got a nice gun, fantastic standard pennant, like 290 if you're running Cali. It's got a good alpha at 460, and unlike the mouse that actually suffers on its accuracy, the VK90 does not suffer on the accuracy because the gun was never nerfed. Because of that, the VK90 is really solid in that aspect, and I should also add this tank has reticle calibration for some reason. So yeah, I don't know why it actually has reticle calibration, to be honest. It is a German super heavy, but either way, it's really solid in that aspect. The VK90 has a lot of hit points at around, I think, like 2,850 or something like that, so that's also really good, and it's got some of the best armor in Tier 10 for a super heavy. Its upper plate is nearly impervious, its lower plate is incredibly troll, and the side armor is really troll as well. Half the time it'll say you'll pen the sides, you'll shoot it, and then it won't pen. So because of that, the VK90 easily fits into this super strong category. Next up, we have the Kron. Now, the Kron is just an amazing tank. It's got haul-down capabilities, which allow it to be impervious in the turret. It's got a gun that is good in some aspects and bad in others. The dispersion on the gun is nice. It hits a lot of its shells, and I think the reason the dispersion and accuracy are good is because Wargaming knew that the DPM is pretty poor on the vehicle, so if you missed a lot of your shells, it would be pretty unworkable to drive the tank. So it's got a nice gun, especially when you look at the 374 heat pen it carries. The Kron has pretty good mobility for what it is. I mean, it only goes 30, but it's got a nice power to weight. And when you use the super speed boost on the vehicle, it's able to go 35 with a fantastic power to weight uphill, and if you use super speed boost in reverse, you can go 30 kilometers per hour, or I think it's 28, but either way, the tank is fast when it comes to how slow it is, which is weird to say, but it's not bad on mobility at all. I've never noticed the Kron's mobility really being terrible, unless I guess you're in a comp scene and you've got to make it from point A to point B to get into a brawl very quickly. The Kron's an auto reloader, which allows it to have 3 shells in total and dump all of the 3 shells with 400 alpha in a matter of 6 seconds, dealing 1200 damage. The more you eat into the clip, the more DPM you lose, which is actually a interesting mechanic. It used to be the more you eat into the clip, the more DPM you gain, but Wargaming realized, maybe that's not the best idea, so let's make it a bit of the opposite, which is how they are on PC. The more shells you shoot, the worse the DPM gets. It's not a bad tank at all. In fact, it's an absolutely fantastic tank, easily making it into the super strong category. The Kron's hull armor is pretty good, and it's got a couple troll spots, like the side armor's got a little red spot that you cannot pen. But not only that, the Kron has literally an impervious turret. If you're even being aimed at by a YAG, as long as you're hull down using the 9 degrees of gun depression you have, you're never ever going to be penned. So I think the Kron is absolutely amazing because that it's a super chill, easy tank to play, and you can almost never go wrong with the vehicle. Next up, we have the Minnow, which is a vehicle that I have not ranked yet in any of my tier lists because it's a brand new line. Now, the Minnow is an interesting one, really. I mean, it's a tank that sacrifices a lot for the alpha and the way the gun works and the armor. The Minnow has pretty solid armor. It's got about 330-ish millimeters on the turret, which means as long as you're hull down, you're going to get a decent chunk of bounces. But it does have a big hatch on the roof, and the side armor of the turret is pretty dang bad. The lower plate does have the weak spot. It's not easy to pen with AP, but as soon as you load heat, you'll penetrate that lower plate all the time. When it comes to the side armor, the Minnow is absolutely awful, but it features the fastest track repair speed for any tank destroyer in tier 10, so that's kind of a fun fact that a lot of people might not know. The Minnow features 490 damage per shot and a 3-shell auto reloader, kind of similar to the Kron, but just a lot more alpha. However, there's one downside to the Minnow, and that is the DPM and the accuracy. The Minnow features one of the least accurate tier 10 guns in the game, and when you add that into the fact that the vehicle has a reserve shell that takes 20 seconds to load one single shell, yeah, that kind of sucks. The other 2 shells in the vehicle are about 12 to 14 seconds, which are not nearly as bad, but when you're using those 2 shells, you still only have about 2,300 DPM. I mean, overall, the Minnow's gun is not the strength of the vehicle. It's the fact that it's got a lot of armor and the ability to get hull down with its 10 degrees of gun depression. It's a decently flexible tank because of that, but it's also got some of the worst traverse speed in tier 10, allowing mediums to easily flank to your side. Because of that, I'm going to put the Minnow into the I'm going to do the good category. I do not think the Minnow is a super strong or even necessarily strong tank. I think that if Wargaming were to just make its traverse speed a little better, or what I've said ever since the tank's been released, just remove that reserve shell mechanic and make it maybe 15 or 14 seconds to load in that first shell. I don't know. Just making the reload on that first shell better would make it a lot better of a vehicle, or making it so that when you load into the battle, you have your shells loaded, or at least your reserve shell loaded. That way you can actually shoot somebody without having to reload for 40 seconds at the beginning of a game. Let's say you're on a map like Normandy. I can't tell you how many times with the Minnow I've played on Normandy. I get into the front line and I don't even have all 3 shells loaded, and then I can't shoot anybody that pokes because of the fact that I don't want to lose massive DPM. So I think the tank is good. Originally, I thought it was kind of in the just meh to workable category, but it's grown on me. It's not a bad tank by any means, and there are some games where I can definitely see it being in the strong category, but there's just better options out there, so right now I think the Minnow's going to stay in good. The Jagdpanzer E100 is super strong, easily. I mean, the Jagdpanzer got the same armor buff that the E100 got. Its superstructure went from about 310-ish to 330 millimeters thick. It got a 20 mil buff. And because of that, now when vehicles like the T62A or the Leopard 1 or anything that's a medium tries aiming at your YAG, they're not going to pen. I mean, I run enhanced armor on the YAG, which not only do I have 2,200 hit points because it got a hit point buff, but I also have the ability to just bounce the majority of shells fired at me. Even heavy tanks, sorry, hit my mic there, but even heavy tanks struggle to penetrate the Jagdpanzer. When you add that onto the fact that the vehicle has a really good aiming time and decent dispersion and great DPM at 3,000 plus 800 damage per shot plus ridiculously good penetration, the YAG is just an amazing tank. I mean, yeah, it doesn't have a turret, and it's a big, clunky vehicle that you can very easily take advantage of. But if you're a player that understands how to position and use the YAG, it is by far one of the better tier 10 tank destroyers, right up there next to the T110 E3. I really, really like playing the vehicle. It is incredibly powerful. Up next, after the YAG, we have the Grille 15, which is a tank that I'm going to put into workable. That's really... I like the Grille. Don't get me wrong. I think the gun is great. I think the DPM's nice. I just don't know why they nerfed the alpha. I think I said this on my previous tier list. In fact, I can check really quickly because I have it. Previous tier list, I put it in, yeah, workable as well. But I mean, it makes sense why it's unworkable. The tank is not a great vehicle. Its gun is okay, but why would you drive a Grille when the Houri exists with only 40 less alpha and more DPM, really good accuracy, better armor, good mobility on the Houri, and the dumbest gun when it comes to penetration? I don't get it. The Grille is a cool-looking vehicle, but apart from that, I personally believe that Wargaming should buff the alpha back to 640 and make the HE back to 960. Apart from that, it's not a bad tank. I mean, it's got okay camo values, and it's got one of the most accurate tank destroyer guns in the game at .272 dispersion. It's just not as good as it used to be. That's really the best way to describe it. We have the T100LT next, and the T100LT is going to go into the super strong category. While I do think that the spotting mechanic, the T100LT, is a bit busted, I don't notice it being as annoying nowadays, as not as many people really play the tank. After the tank got its damage per minute nerf, it's just never been really the same as it used to be. Don't get me wrong, it's still, as you can see, in the super strong category. It's just not in that broken category that it used to be when it had that ridiculously good damage per minute. But it's still a great tank. Its upper plate is very troll, gets a lot of bounces. Same for the turret armor and the sides as well. The tank is very hard to penetrate with high explosive. It's got the best camo values in tier 10 for a light, and as I said, it can spot you for 20 seconds as long as it hits you. It can literally keep you spotted across the map as a tank destroyer. Let's say you're on dead rail. You can go up to medium side uncontested, shoot tank destroyers if they get spotted across the map, and keep them lit up the entire game and never once be spotted. That is a little busted, I will say. So I'm tempted to put the T100LT into the broken category, but I just don't notice them being as big of a problem as they used to be. So because of that, it's staying in super strong. The Object 140 it's an oddball. I've said that about a lot of tanks, but the Object 140 is definitely a vehicle that struggles in a lot of aspects, like the fact that it doesn't have good turret armor. But it also has a lot of aspects that are really good, like the DPM, the mobility is absolutely fantastic, and it's got really solid camo values. The problem is, why drive an Object 140 when you just drive a T100LT, which, you know, is kind of just better. So, trying to think of where I want to put the Object 140. I'm going to put it into good. I don't think it's a bad tank by any means, and while I was tempted to put it in workable, I actually think it's a good tank. I mean, sure, it doesn't have the armor that it used to, but I like that Wargaming made it a new playstyle compared to what it used to be. It's mobile, it's got great DPM, it's got really good camo, actually. I'm surprised when I play how good the camo is half the time. But because of that, it's not bad at all. It's a good tank. You can work it pretty well. You just have to understand how to use it. There's not much really to say about it. It's just kind of your average Soviet medium, but there you go. There's the Object 140. Next up, we have the T62A, which is going to make its way into the strong category. I'm in between. I'd put it like there. I'd put it in between strong and super strong, but for now, it's just going to go into the strong category. The T62A features 310 damage per shot, really good DPM, but not so great accuracy. It used to be, if you look at a tier list I made about 2 years ago, the tier list will say the 62A's got the best accuracy paired with the Leopard. However, Wargaming nerfed the accuracy, and now it's not nearly as good as it used to be. I still like the 62A. I think the mobility is really nice after they buffed it, and it plays more like the Soviet mediums do on World of Tanks PC, where they're more mobile, but they've got really, really bad accuracy, but they also have really good DPM, so they just fling a bunch of shells at their opponents, hope some of them stick, and that's how they play. So because of that, I like the 62A. It's got good gun depression at 7 degrees, and it's got pretty good turret armor, which allows it to get a lot of bounces when hull down. But when there's tanks like the E50M that exist that kind of just bully this tank, I don't know. It's a strong tank. It's definitely not super strong in my opinion, but that's because this is the super strong version of the T62A, being the Object 907. The 907 is everything the T62A wishes it could be. The 907's got a stronger turret and a very, very troll hatch system that honestly, I don't even go for the hatches. Half the time when you shoot at an Object 907 hatch, it flat misses. The other half, it doesn't penetrate when it hits. Because of that, it's one of the hardest tanks to pen hull down in the mediums class. The Object 907 is the fastest of all mediums, right up there next to the Object 140, going at a power to weight that's insane and a really, really solid top speed of 60 kilometers per hour. It also features now the best dispersion paired with the Leopard 1 at .272. It's got good DPM. It's not as good as the 62A or 140's DPM, but it's still plenty. And when you add that into the fact that the 907 also has really troll upper and side armor because of the way that it's angled, it's just an amazing tank. It really is. It's got everything going for it. And It's also got 7 degrees of gun depression, I should add in, which makes it just as flexible as the T62A on a lot of ridge lines. So, yeah, the 907 I've always argued is an amazing tank, and after Wargaming buffed it, it's just even more of an amazing vehicle. Next up, we have the T22 medium, the last of the Soviet mediums. And I'm trying to really think of where I would rank the T22 medium. It's between strong and super strong. I'm still going to put it in the super strong. It's got great armor, very, very troll side armor. The other day, Flossie and I were against some T22 medium that we were joking at. Oh, look at him side scraping, reverse side scraping. And then we couldn't pen him. I mean, it's still a really good vehicle because of the way that its armor works. You will always bounce it occasionally because of just how troll it is. Also add into the fact that T22 medium has really incredible turret armor. It's probably the most armored turret for a medium in the game, just because you can't pen the turret even with premium shells 99% of the time. T22 medium also has really good DPM. It's got great mobility, going like 56 kilometers per hour. There's nothing bad about the tank. It's a really, really good vehicle. The only thing that really isn't as good as it used to be on this tank is the fact that its armor has kind of weakened over the years. It's not really that the armor's weakened, but it doesn't hold up as well as it used to tier 10 as a whole. But overall, it's still a super strong vehicle. So, I mean, there's really no things to complain about when it comes to the T22. Next up, we have the IS4, another vehicle in the super strong. Wow, we're filling out the super strong list pretty fast. I don't even know if we're going to have enough room, but I guess I can extend it out. So I'm not too worried about that. But the IS4 is another super strong tank. I just made a video on this tank the other day. It's just great. I mean, it's got fantastic armor. It's got 2,800 hit points. I think it's like actually 2,850 hit points. The IS4 has 374 millimeters of heat pen, decent dispersion, decent mobility, going 38 kilometers per hour. I mean, it's not bad by any means on any category. And when you add that into the fact that it's got really good armor, especially on the turret, and the fact that the IS4 can side scrape like a freaking beast after they changed the way the side armor works, it's super strong. It is just a juggernaut on the battlefield. Any new player that plays the IS4, as long as they understand a little bit about the game, will do very, very well in the tank. So very easily, the IS4 fits into the super strong category. The IS7, I'm going to put one rank below in the strong category. Don't get me wrong. The IS-7 is fast. It goes 45 kilometers per hour. The IS-7 features a nice gun with alpha. It's got 460, and it's got really, really good armor on the turret and the hull and the sides. But the reason I don't like the IS-7 is because the gun is doo-doo. It's 303 millimeters of APCR pen. I'm going to be honest, just quite frankly isn't enough in tier 10 nowadays. We keep getting more and more armored heavy tanks like the Minnow now. The IS-7 really struggles to pen. The Type 71, the IS-7 really can't pen frontally. And add in the 268 version 4. And yeah, the IS-7 really just struggles to penetrate a lot of enemy opponents. Because of that, I just think the gun needs like a maybe 15-20 millimeter premium pen buff, and that's it. Apart from that, that's all it needs. I would easily put it in the super strong if it got enough pen to cut through enemy opponents that are well armored. I've just always hated the aspect of making a vehicle worse because it has bad pen. I mean, that's nothing about the tank that you can do anything really with. You just have worse pen than your opponents, which means they can pen you sometimes very easily, but you can't bend them back easily. For example, the IS-4. So because of that, the IS-7's strong, just not as good as the IS-4. The Object 260, yeah, that one's going in the workable. I really do not like the Object 260. I mean, there are games where I enjoy it, but there are also games where I absolutely hate it. And because of that, yeah, it's a love-hate relationship. It's definitely a workable tank. There are situations I played in the Object 260 where I've easily done 5, 6, even 7,000 damage games because it's got great DPM, it's got super good mobility, and it's got the fantastic alpha of 420, which is a bit more than the Concept, and as well the E6, which are also both mobile heavies. So it's got that going for it. Problem is, first of all, pretty poor penetration. It's got APCR as standard, which sucks. Its accuracy, while good on paper, is kind of troll on how it actually works. And then we break into the main two problems that the Object 260 carries, which is the fact that it only has 6 degrees of gun depression, which is very, very unflexible on the majority of ridgelines, and the fact that the vehicle only has like 200 millimeters of frontal armor, which sucks. Even the turret armor isn't good on the vehicle. Like, yeah, the T95 E6 doesn't have great armor either, but it has troll armor on the turret and the hull, and as well, the E6 features 10 degrees of gun depression, allowing it to be hull down. Plus, the E6 has a much better gun on accuracy, a much better gun on penetration. I just think the E6 is flat better. There's no reason I would ever drive an Object 260 when the E6 is currently existing in the game the way it does. Hopefully Wargaming realizes why the 260 sucks and buffs its armor a bit. That's what I do. I'd nerf its mobility to like 40 or 45 and make its armor really solid. But I guess we'll have to see what Wargaming ends up doing with the tank in the future. Next up, we have the Object 268 version 4, a vehicle that a lot of people, when it originally came out, dubbed as completely overpowered, and now nobody says anything really about the tank. And that's because it's kind of a mediocre vehicle on fun. It's a chill tank. I made a video literally like yesterday saying this is probably my most chill tank in the game because all I do is drive in a straight line, shoot the poobs in front of me, and that's about it. It's a fun tank because of that, but it's also not the best tank in a lot of situations. I played a game yesterday in the V4 when I was on Mayan Ruins, and a single T92E1 was able to ruin my entire battle by sitting in front of a rock. I couldn't push the T92E1 because it's more mobile than me, and that was it. I was just stuck there, and that's the problem with the tank like the V4, is it's, yeah, great reverse speed at 20. It's got decent mobility, actually, on top speed at like 38, but it's not very mobile on traverse, and it allows a lot of mediums to get to your sides and rear and absolutely punish you. So the V4 is going to make it into the strong category. I don't think it is super strong, because it's only super strong against like 40 to 45% players. Once you start fighting decent players, the V4's armor pretty quickly falls apart, and the facade of, I am super strong Goliath man, also kind of falls apart. I like the Alpha, but the Alpha's plagued with terrible accuracy. I like the gun, but its DPM isn't great, and the accuracy, as I just said, is awful. It's a fun tank, but it's definitely not a vehicle that you're going to carry every single game in, and it's not a tank that you're going to love the gun in every battle, and it will cause you to miss shots that might have been game-changing because of the Alpha that it carries. So I like the V4, I don't love it, but I definitely think it's in the strong category. The Object 268, as well, is going into the strong category because of the way that it plays. It features an absolutely insane gun with 670 damage per shot, allowing it to absolutely badonk the enemy teammates for quite a bit, especially when the HE is like 1,000 damage per shot now. It's really, really nasty on the Alpha it carries. Add that into the fact the Object 268 has the most camo in Tier 10. Also the fact that it's very mobile, being able to go upwards of 50, and the fact that it's got 50 degrees of traverse speed plus 7 degrees of gun depression. The 268 is the jack of all trades. It has everything going for it. There's not a single downside I can really name for the 268 when it comes to the tank destroyer class. It's just a really solid vehicle, and it looks really nice. So because of that, it's in strong. It's a really strong tank destroyer. The reason I'm not putting it in super strong is I don't think it's better than the T110E3 or the YAG when it comes to the survivability aspect. That's the problem that a lot of tank destroyers have, is that they're great until late game. And late game, their armor and hit points just isn't enough to really hold up compared to heavy tanks or mediums. So because of that, it's strong. I don't think it's super strong. I think it's just strong. The Object 260, on the other hand, I think is super strong because of the gun that it carries and the armor profile. The Object 260 for years was always a good tank, until Wargaming buffed the one thing that I'd been begging for them to buff for years, and that was the mantlet. The vehicle's gun mantlet previously was a very easy penetration, because if you penned the mantlet, there was nothing behind it, and the shells just went straight through into your hull. You needed like 340 mils a pen, and you would easily penetrate the Object 263. And because this tank is kind of meant to bully heavies with the DPM and gun it carries, it was always unfortunate to just get penned every time. However, now, the Object 263, after it got buffed, has spaced armor behind that mantlet, which means you cannot pen the 263 mantlet unless you have APCR shells. And the majority of Tier 10s, as we all know, fire heat. So that means if you're in an Object 268, a YAG Panzer 100, or anything that has super high heat, you're not going to cut through the turret on the vehicle, or not the turret, but the mantlet. Add that into the fact that the superstructure on the vehicle is like 380 thick, and if you're running enhanced armor, you get up to like 400, and the fact that the upper plate's like 500 thick. The 263 is a really hard tank to pen. Now, the engine deck is a very easy penetration. If you're face hugging it, you can just shoot right on the engine deck, and the lower plate is very easy to penetrate as well. So it definitely has weak spots, but oh man, does that gun hit hard. 3,860 DPM allows it to easily tear into the opponents, especially with the fact that it's got decent aiming time and really, really good alpha at 460. It's a nice combo of alpha and DPM. Overall, the Object 263 is insanely powerful. I really like the tank. The only downside of it is the fact that it has pretty poor gun depression at 4 degrees. When it comes to mobility, it's actually fast. It goes 50 kilometers per hour, and it's got 50 degrees of traverse, which means it's almost impossible to get behind the vehicle. It's just an amazing tank. It's even got good camo. I really like the 263, and if you don't want to purchase the Badger, it's as close as you're going to get to its playstyle. The Vickers Light is our first British vehicle, and the Vickers Light is just a super good tank, and because of that, it's going into the super strong category. Honestly, the majority of lights in Blitz at tier 10 are all really solid, apart from one, which we'll be breaking into, but the Vickers Light is just really good all around. It's got great mobility, 60 kilometers per hour, it's got a nice gun, it's got 350 damage per shot, it has Hesh with like 120 mils of pen that deals 440 damage a shot. It's basically got the poor man's gun on the 4202, the gun that doesn't shoot Hesh, but let's be real, that's still a really nice gun, especially to have mounted on a light tank. The Vickers Light's upper plate is actually really troll, and if you're hull down, you'll get a lot of bounces from AP shells. The side armor's troll, especially with the way the tracks work, and the gun mantlet on the Vickers Light is really solid because of the fact that it's like 280 to 90 thick, and it's all spaced, which means if you try shooting heat on the mantlet, you're actually going to struggle to penetrate it. Overall, the Vickers Light is a really, really good tank. It's got just everything going for it. Oh, and Wargaming buffed the dispersion lately, which means now it's one of the most accurate tier 10s in the game. Overall, I really like the Vickers. It's fantastic on a lot of aspects, and it's kind of the jack of all trades when it comes to the light tanks class. Because of that, very easily into the super strong category. The FV215B is as well going into the super strong category. It's just a great tank. It's got a turret buff recently, where now the tank is really troll to penetrate. The 4202 has always had a super strong upper plate, but the turret's always been the weak spot, so the upper plate's really hard to pen, but the turret's really easy. Wargaming buffed the turret by like 40 mils in some spots, and because of that, nowadays, when you shoot at the 4202 turret, there's a lot of times when you just don't pen it. You'll be like, oh wow, it looks easy to pen, and then it'll miss by like an inch where you aimed and just ricochet off, because that's how the turret armor is now. It's really frustrating to fight the tank because of that, especially because it goes 60 kilometers per hour and features an incredibly deadly gun with good DPM and 440 damage, 230 millimeter Hesh. Yeah, that's nasty. So I really like the 4202. It's a super solid tank, and you do not want to be stuck on the bad side of that vehicle's gun because it's going to hurt a lot. Now, I'm going to extend out my super strong category because it needs to be extended out, so we're just going to drag this down real quick. Alright, the categories are stretched, so we can add a lot more stuff in now, but I don't think we're going to have to worry all too much about that because we're moving on to the Super Conqueror. And the Super Conq is, oof, it's a good one. It's a really good tank. This one, I have to do it again, but I'm putting it into the super strong. I actually have to say, it's good that a lot of the tanks in Blitz, as you can see, are in the super strong category. There might be some of you watching down below, why are there no tanks in good? Why does he put everything in super strong or strong? Why, why isn't there more diversification? But it's good that I'm putting a lot of the tanks in similar categories, because it means that Wargaming has actually done an okay job at balancing the majority of tier 10 to be fairly similar on how they perform. Everything being super strong, in theory, would make everything average, but I put them as super strong because, to what I'm aware, each of these tanks when I play feel super strong, so that's why they go there. The Super Conq is super strong, though. After they buffed the one thing that it's always struggled at, and that was the hit points and the side armor. I cannot tell you how annoying it is to drive a British tank that has these big old chunky tracks and then just get penned right through the track wheel. That's always been a problem for British tanks. However, Wargaming buffed the Super Conq to no longer have that problem. Its tracks and side armor are now very, very solid, allowing it to be really, really good in the front line. Add that into the fact that the Super Conq now sits at like 2,550 health, where it used to be 2,438, and yeah, that tank is very solid. The gun is great. It's got 2,600 DPM if you're running rammer. It's got great penetration. I like to run Cali on it. Plus, it's got Hesh with 515 damage a shot. Pretty nice pen at about 120. Overall, the Super Conq is a really good tank, and because of that, I think it's fantastic. But we got another tank to go into super strong. This tank's always been super strong and always will be. The Chieftain has never been an overpowered tank. It's always been a super strong tank, because of the way the gun works. It's got a great gun, 3,000 DPM. It's got fantastic mobility, going 42 kilometers per hour. It's got pretty good gun depression at 10 degrees and decent armor. The upper plate is nearly impervious, and the turret, even though it's been a little outdated on how good the armor is on the turret, let's be honest, it's still pretty strong. You can get a lot of bounces haul down in the Chieftain MK6. The tank looks great. I cannot wait for the vehicle to get PBR, and we'll have to see what Wargaming ends up doing to the turret armor when it does finally get those graphics. But I gotta be honest, I really like the Chieftain MK6. I don't think there's anybody I've ever met that doesn't really like the Chieftain MK6. So, yeah, it's very easily fitting into the super strong category. I got no regrets about that one. I just love the Chieftain MK6. Always have. I don't play it enough, but I definitely would. I just have so many tanks in my garage, I forget about playing some of them. But, man, I might play the MK6 after this video. It is such a good tank. The FV215B is a tricky one, because the FV215B has one of the best guns in Tier 10, but it has some of the worst armor in Tier 10. I'm putting it in the strong. I like the 215B. I like it a lot more than I used to like it. I used to hate the 215B. I have a video titled, like, Not My Cup of Tea, where I just rant about the tank for, like, 8 minutes. I say it's a good tank. There's players out there that can do very well in it, but it's not my type of tank. And that is still the same thing that I've always had the problem with the 215B. Wargaming doesn't know how to balance the vehicle. They've done a better job nowadays, but I personally believe what Wargaming should do to the FV215B, I say this every time I talk about the tank, is make its DPM about 26 to 2700, make its accuracy worse, and give it side armor. I want to see a 215B that can side scrape. It's got a great turret that's fantastic at being able to show it, but it doesn't have a hull that's able to get bounces. I want to see a buff to the side armor by like 100 mils, and then I think it would be a really good tank at side scraping and a really solid vehicle overall. But I guess we'll have to find out. I don't think Wargaming will ever do it, but that's always how I've personally wanted to see the FV215B, because it's a heavy British tank. But with that aside, the tank is still strong. It's got a great gun, 190, I think it's 187 millimeters to be exact, of Hesh pen, which is insane. You can bend the side of an E100 turret with the FV215B, and it's got ridiculous DPM values of 3,000 plus, so you can rip into your opponents. Add that into the insane dispersion, very good penetration, and 7 degrees of gun depression with a really solid turret. It's a great tank. The only downside, as I said, is the hull is terrible. I was just talking about how the British tanks like the Super Conk used to have the problem of being penned in the track wheel very easily. Well, the Chieftain and 215B still have the problem of you'll just pen the track wheel every single time you shoot it. Because of that, yeah, it's a bit of a downside there. So I like the 215B, but I also hate it. It's a love-hate relationship. It's very good and very bad at the exact same time. Now we move on to the FV215B 183. And we all know where this one's going. It's going into just meh. It's always a just meh tank. The fact that the gun is just meh. I mean, yeah, it's got okay dispersion. Wargaming actually buffed the dispersion to be 0.353 if you're running refined, which I would suggest to do. And the tank's got pretty good DPM and pretty good alpha and nasty, nasty Hesh alpha at 1300. It's got a lot of things going for it, but it's also got the worst camo in Tier 10, some of the worst armor in Tier 10, some of the worst mobility in Tier 10. It's very easy to pet. Everybody can rip you apart. Any player that understands how to deal with a 183 will easily deal with a 183. It's only the occasional player that nukes you because, oh, you know, you poked a spot maybe you shouldn't have, or, I don't know, they were just sitting in a really goofy spot. The majority of 183 players are not a big threat, and it's the worst performing Tier 10 in the game. The Leopard is the worst performing medium, the 183 is the worst performing Tier 10, just because of everything it has going for it. But that makes sense. It's a tank that you're playing because of the gun, because of the alpha, and nothing else. You're not playing a 183 because, oh, it's got armor, or it's got camo. No, you're playing it because you want to nuke somebody's hit point. So that's why it goes into the just meh category. The 4005 is going into broke. It's been a while. It's been a very long time since we've gotten into that category, but we're there. The 4005 features a 4-shell gun. That does 410 damage per shot, which means in total you deal 1,640 damage. And the best part, or the scariest part about the 4005, is that it has shell reload boost, which means that the vehicle can deal all of this damage in like 4.5 seconds. That is so stupid. 1,640 damage in 4.5 seconds. That means you can literally poke an E100 after it shoots, perma-track it in the track wheel, take off more than half of its health, and then reverse in the cover using super speed boost before the tank will even get the opportunity to see what hit it. It is such a dumb tank because of that. Yes, it can fall apart very quickly. It has terrible armor, and it's one of the largest vehicles in the game. It is super easy to rip into, but it doesn't matter when it has the ability to do what it can do. I could be a 40%er and YOLO somebody in front of me and literally nuke their hit points and then die, but I could still bring a full health medium down to about a one-shot for everybody on my team, just killing myself and making myself a bigger impact in the battle than I probably ever would be if I just tried to use it like a normal tank destroyer. That is stupid, and that's why the 4005 will always be in broken with the gun that it currently carries. It's just such a hard tank to try and counter when it's dumping you. It's painful. The Badger is another tank making it into the broken category. Surprising, right? You wouldn't expect to see two British tanks in the broken category, but the Badger is currently the #1 performing tier 10 in the game, by far. It's got insane armor. It's got ridiculous traverse at like 45 degrees a second, which is stupid for how heavily armored the tank is. It's got 10 degrees of gun depression. It's got 3,800 plus DPM. It's got 460 alpha. Its dispersion is bad. I will say that. Like, the base dispersion is good, but its on-movement dispersion is absolutely terrible. And what happens is you turn the tank like this, or you move the gun. It's just terrible on movement. If you try snapping shells with the Badger, you're going to miss every time. Anybody that owns the tank knows exactly what I'm talking about right now. That is a big downside of the tank. But apart from that, that is the only downside of the tank. Everybody makes fun of the Badger until the Badger's in front of them, tearing their butthole a new hole. And that's just kind of how the Badger is. I mean, I use the tank in comp a lot. It is that good of a vehicle. So I really like the tank. It is super, super strong, and it can definitely give the enemy a run for their money, especially because of all the aspects it has. Even the side armor on the Badger is super good now. The fact that the sides of the tank are like 200 thick, and the fact that the lower part of the sides got buffed, I was speechless when I saw what Wargaming buffed on the tank. It went from 3,450 DPM to an additional 400. And then they said, you know what, let's also buff the side armor and let's buff the traverse speed. And that was after they buffed the top speed to 35. The Badger is not slow. It does not have a bad gun. There's nothing bad about the Badger. It is a insane tank. That's really all there is to say. Up next, we have the STB1, which is going into the super strong category. The STB1 is just a really, really good tank. It's good at hull down. Also, you can't see what I've dragged there, but there you go. Let me just zoom out once. You know what? That's a really far zoom out. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. I hate the magnifying glass. It's kind of hard to use, but you know what? That didn't do too bad there. There. That's good. Okay. As I was saying, the STB1 is a pretty good tank overall. I mean, it's got really good gun depression, 11 degrees, making it the most depressed tank in tier 10. But it really is. It's great gun depression. The alpha's nice, 350. It's got good DPM at 3,000 plus, and it's got really good armor. It's got, I would say, as good armor as a lot of heavies that have good hull down capabilities. You're going to struggle to pen that tank. The only weak spot it has is a hatch on the roof, and you only hit it about maybe 1 out of the 5 shells you shoot. It's a really good tank in that aspect. The STB1 also features really solid mobility, going 53 kilometers per hour, so it's not slow either, and even though its dispersion isn't good at 0.326, it's not bad. It's a frontline hull down medium, which means you shouldn't have to worry about the dispersion when you are obviously sitting directly in front of your opponents. So the STB overall, super strong tank. It will always be super strong until Wargaming nerfs something detrimental on it, but for now, I still think it's great, and because of that, it's a really solid vehicle. Next up, we have the Type 71. The Type 71's a hard vehicle to rank. I'm putting it in super strong for now. I was tempted to put it into broken, but I think it's super strong. If you're running the mobility module on the Type 71 on equipment, it is still a super strong tank. The traverse is fine, it's still better than the IS4. The mobility on top speed and acceleration is still also better than the IS4 on the Type 71. And when you add that into the fact that the gun on the Type 71 is better than the IS4 on movement dispersion and accuracy base, it's just a better gun. It's just flat better. The Type 71 also, in my opinion, has better armor than the IS4, and Wargaming buffed its hit points and weight in the latest updates, which means now the Type 71 is super, super heavy, which makes it fantastic at ramming, and the Type 71 has a lot of hit points, meaning that it can chunk a lot more shells than it used to be able to. Overall, it's got ridiculously good armor, it's got a lot of hit points, a lot of mobility still, and it's got an insanely good gun. It's a great tank. The only disadvantage the Type has over the IS4 is the turret has cheeks that you can penetrate, which are a lot harder to do on the IS4, and it's got a hatch that you can penetrate. Apart from that, it's a really amazing tank. Japan has never released a bad vehicle, and that is the case for the Hori as well, which is going into the broken category. Why is it going into the broken category? Well, it's because of the gun, specifically just the gun. The Hori's hull itself is troll, but not hard to penetrate. The mobility is good, but not amazing. The gun depression, I don't even know how much it has, probably like 6 degrees. It's not great on gun depression. It's a massive box that is a giant shoot me sign. But looks aside, the vehicle's gun is broken. This is the only tank in Tier 10 that can penetrate a cron hull down. The Hori is the only vehicle in Tier 10 that can penetrate the majority of tanks that other vehicles can't penetrate, including fellow tank destroyers. The gun is .308 dispersion, and it's got some of the best on-movement accuracy in the game. It means that you can literally go from this angle, turn at 50 degrees a second to the angle to your side, instantly snap a shell, and because you've got so much pen with the Hori, instantly pen your opponents. The tank is stupid. It's always been stupid, and I do not understand why more people don't grind down the line. If you're a newer player, the Hori is by far one of the best beginner tanks in the game, and that is why it goes in the broken, specifically because of the gun it features. It is such a nasty gun. Next up, we have the WZ132-1, and it's going into workable. That's as generous as I'll be to the tank. I was very tempted to put it into just meh. The workable category is it needs a buff. Just meh, to explain a little further, just meh means the tank kind of sucks, but you understand it sucks, so I mean, literally, the only tank that ever goes into that category every year is the 183. So the just meh category is literally just the 183. Every other tank is going from workable to broken, because as I always say in every video, every tank review, I do not believe there is such thing as bad tanks in an aspect that you cannot drive the vehicle. There are tanks that are worse than others, but I would not call them bad and unworkable. I would just call them harder to play and do well in. And that is the case for the WZ132-1. Out of the majority of Tier 10s currently in Blitz, I would rank the WZ132-1 as the worst of all of them. It is not a great tank. It's not even a good tank. It is a very mediocre vehicle. The gun is nice on the DPM, and that is it. The mobility is worse than the majority of the other lights. The gun has mid-alpha at 330. It's not as good as the Vickers Light. It's not as good as the Sheridan. And even though it is better than the Batchat's alpha, it doesn't matter because the Batchat's got a freaking clip. So the only tank it really beats on alpha is the T100LT. The difference is that the T100LT has the best camo in Tier 10. This tank does not. T100LT is a lot lower down and troller on the armor. This tank is not. T100LT has much better pen. This tank has the worst standard pen in Tier 10, and it's got really poor heat pen at 325, where the T100LT gets AP on the premium, which is amazingly good. T100LT is faster, and it's got a spotting mechanic that allows you to keep your opponents detected for 20 seconds, where this tank has a spotting mechanic that lets you get unspotted 3 seconds faster and lets you know when you're instantly spotted. I like the mechanic the vehicle has. I hate the gun, and I hate the way the tank plays. I think that I don't hate the tank itself, I just don't like the way Wargaming balanced it. I think that if it had 7 degrees of gun depression, it would be completely fine, because it would be flexible on ridge lines. But right now, the fact that it only has 5 degrees of gun depression, and the hull armor and turret are really poor, just makes it this really uncomfortable situation, where you're trying to work it, and you're trying to use gun depression, but you get stuck on a map like Normandy, and you're like, come on, man, I don't know what to do on Normandy with the WZ132-1, and that's kind of where the tank is really unfortunate to drive. So, it's not a bad tank, it's workable, but it's definitely in need of a buff on its gun depression, or maybe its alpha, I don't know. Something I think needs to be changed on the vehicle from what we currently have. The WZ121 is up next, and the 121 is going to make itself into the super strong category. I love the WZ121. It's got 420 damage per shot, the fastest aiming time in Tier 10, great mobility going 56 kilometers per hour, and a hull that's about 240 thick on the front. Also a turret that is very very hard to penetrate. You're going to have to load heat to cut through it. All those things alone are great. When you add that into the fact that the tank with the Alpha also features 3,440 DPM and 3,220 if you're running Kali, it's a really good tank overall. I am surprised to not see more 121s rolling around on the battlefield. The majority of times people grind down and don't grind down lines is because of the way of a tank looks. For example, the E100 line, super popular because, oh, the Tiger 1, super strong tank in real life. And the 62A is super popular because the Soviet tanks are always popular in Blitz. But for some reason, the Chinese tanks are just viewed as worse Soviets, which is wrong. A lot of the Chinese tanks are really, really good, which you're going to find out as we go into more and more of these vehicles. But the 121 with the Alpha, the mobility, the armor is definitely a super duper strong tank. Next up, we have the 121B, which is not going to go into super strong, but it is going to fit into strong. The 121B has mobility, and now it has two weird consumables, being reactive armor and super speed boost. I'm not really sure why Wargaming gave it to the tank. They were like, you know what, wouldn't it be funny, comrade, if we gave tank funny consumable? I think that's really all they were saying, because there's no way they actually legitimately thought giving those tanks the consumables they have was a good idea for the tank. But hey, the 121B can go like 64 now as a medium, making it the fastest for a limited amount of time. Ooh. But that's the one thing that's interesting. But the 121B in general is just a better 62A in my opinion. Its alpha is more than the 62A. It's only got 1 degree less gun depression, yet better turret armor and better hull armor. The tank goes just as fast, and the 121B features more alpha, sitting at 350 rather than the 310 that the T62A carries. Because of that, I really, really like the 121B. It's got a good gun on dispersion, 0.308. It's got really good DPM at around 3,500 if you're running rammer, which is just on par with the 62A. It's just a really solid tank. Everything about it is nice, and I like it. I like it because of that. It's a super confident tank. The WZ113 is going once again into the super strong category. It's got amazing mobility at 45 kilometers per hour of a top speed, and the only thing that was ever holding back the 113 was its traverse, and now it's not. The 113's traverse is absolutely insane. It went from 0 to like 1 million on traverse, so the tank is great in that aspect. It also has a really good gun, 3,440 DPM, in fact the exact same as the WZ121. Its armor isn't the best, but I'll give it some credit. The armor can get bounces here and there. It's actually pretty good at side scraping, and the turret armor is pretty solid. You'll get some bounces in the turret, but the 113 is not a beginner-friendly tank. While on paper it looks great, it's definitely a tricky tank for beginners to understand because of the way the armor works, because of the way the playstyle is. I really like the 113, but I can tell you for a fact that you'll need to understand how to play it before doing very well in it, but easily makes it into the super strong category. I hate to say it, but we have to extend this category out even more. Now we have to go all the way back here and extend all these out more. I don't know why I'm extending, no, we're just going to extend super strong out. I know it's going to look funky, but honestly, super strong is the only category that keeps getting tanks. For example, the next tank up we have is the WZ111-5A, and that's also going in the super strong. Everybody always gave me crap for loving the 5A, and you know what? Now everybody loves the 5A because Wargaming buffed it to be insanely good. The 5A features one of the best turrets in the game. You will not penetrate a 5A turret ever hull down if it's hiding the hatches. It is incredibly powerful. When you add that into the fact that now the 5A has 2,850 DPM with a 460 damage per shot gun, which makes it the highest DPM 460 damage per shot gun in the game, when you also add into that fact that the WZ111-5A features an insanely accurate 130mm with 0.326 dispersion, also making it the most accurate 130mm heavy in the game, it's just insane. I mean, it's essentially, Wargaming was like, what would happen if we gave the SU-130 gun to a tier 10 heavy? And that's what the 5A is. The only downside of the 5A, which I keep saying over and over and over that Wargaming needs to buff, is the heat pen. If they simply just gave it 360 millimeters of heat pen with Kali, that's all it needs. That's all it needs. Right now I'm actually running rammer on it because the pen's so bad on heat, there's no point to even run Kali in my opinion, but that's just kind of how the tank is. I'm kind of disappointed that Wargaming has it as bad as it is, but oh well, maybe one day in the future they'll buff it. Next up, we have the WZ113 GFT, and once again, it's going into the super strong category. The 113 GFT is another banger of a Chinese tank. It's kind of like a 268, but an E3 had a baby. The 113 GFT's entire frontal armor plate, apart from the lower plate weak spot, is about 340 millimeters thick, which means not a single medium will penetrate the frontal armor of your vehicle, even if they're running Cali, as long as you're hauled down. The 113 GFT also features 50 degrees of traverse. It's insane for a tank destroyer to have that much traverse. Add that into the fact the vehicle has 640 alpha, and it's got good DPM, and because the 268 got a buff on its alpha, it got a nerf on its its accuracy, where the 113 GFT still has 0.3 maybe 2.6 dispersion or 0.308. It's got really good dispersion, nonetheless. It's a pretty solid chunk of dispersion. It's better than the 268s, and because of that, actually, I think it's 0.326, because the 268s is 0.344. So I really like the 113 GFT. It's ugly, but it's amazing. I literally made a video on the tank the other day just saying how fantastic the vehicle is and why people should grind down the line more often. So very easily, that tank is fitting into the super strong category. The Boschation 25T, we've made it into the French, is also super strong. The Bat Chat is just amazing. I mean, it really is. It's got 310 damage per shot, and it's got the ability to deal 930 in 5.6 seconds from the first shell. Now, if that sounds a little slow to you, that's fine, because it also has shell reload boost, which brings it down to like a 4.8 second intraclip or something like that, making the vehicle a lot faster on dumping that damage. Not only does the Bat Chat have a really, really nice intraclip with shell reload boost, but it now has the second most view range in tier 10 at 315.2 meters. The Bat Chat also features the best mobility in tier 10, making it the fastest light tank out of them all on power to weight, and the Bat Chat's got pretty solid camo because it's a light tank after all. It's got really good DPM as well. The Bat Chat used to struggle on DPM. It used to be like 2700 back in the day, but then Wargaming buffed it to 2800, and then they buffed it to 2900, and now we're sitting finally at 3000 damage per minute. But also the fact that this tank has spall liner as a light tank, and the fact that the Bat Chat also features really, really troll armor on the upper plate, like you'll bounce that upper plate occasionally, and the side armor, easily super strong. It is a very easy tank to carry in, especially if you understand what you're doing, so that's why it's going into that category. Finally, we've got a tank that's not making it into super strong, which is the AMX-30B. The AMX-30B goes into workable. I like the 30B, surprisingly, but it's still not a great tank. It just needs DPM. It needs its old mobility reverted. Wargaming's a bunch of douchebags, in my opinion, at least when it comes to the AMX-30B, because they ruined the tank. It was okay before. It went 68 kilometers per hour. It was the fastest medium, especially on power to weight, and it still is the fastest on power to weight, but now it only goes 64 or something like that, which is stupid. It should go 68. Not only should it go 68 or 66, whatever the top speed was, it should also have 3,400 or 3,500 DPM. There's no reason why it doesn't, and there's no reason why it shouldn't. So I'm a bit disappointed with the 30B, but it's not the 30B's fault. It's Wargaming's fault that they won't make the tank better. They said, you know what, let's buff the DPM in the next update, and they buffed it by like 30 and then removed its top speed. Wow, good buff. Ooh. Very disappointed in the playstyle of that tank, and that's why it is going there. The AMX-50B is going to make its way into super strong. Once again, you can see it all the way at the end over here. There it is, super strong. The reason the 50B is making it into super strong is just because of the fact that that gun is nasty. It is a 4-shell 380 damage per shot clip, which can deal 1540 damage after 9 seconds of shooting. It is a long intraclip. It's 3 seconds for each cell. But, I'm not going to lie, apparently I've heard rumors that Wargaming is planning on buffing that intraclip, which might just slide it up into the broken category. But I guess we're going to have to find out. For now, I do think it is super strong because I think that 3000 DPM, paired with the fact that the tank has really, really nasty clipping potential, paired with the 10 degrees of gun depression, troll turret armor, and great mobility, make it really solid overall. I mean, yeah, its dispersion was nerfed a little bit when it got the alpha, but it wasn't nerfed enough to really hurt the tank in my overall opinion. So I still like the 50B. I think it's a really fun tank. In fact, I actually like it more now that they nerfed the way the gun, or didn't nerf, but they changed the way the gun plays is the best way to describe it. We also have the AMX M454, and oh, here we go again, all the way over in super strong. AMX M454 is, once again, a really, really good tank. It features 480 damage a shot, which is a really, really nice intermediate, not 500 or, not a super high alpha where you've got an incredibly long reload like the 100, but not a very, weenie alpha where it's not going to hit really hard. The AMX M4 hits really hard, especially when you also add into the fact it features tungsten, which can increase its average damage up to like 560. So, yeah, I mean, the tank is really good on that aspect. It hits hard both ways. Not only does it hit hard, but it's super mobile, going 45 kilometers per hour. It's got pretty good traverse, incredibly fast turret traverse, really good upper plate armor, and incredibly good turret armor. In fact, if you're hull down hiding the hatches using your 8 degrees of gun depression the AMX M4 has, you will never penetrate the tank. I mean, it is that strong on the mantlet and that strong on the turret. The final thing I should add about the AMX M4 is the fact that it's got some nasty HE and really nasty premium rounds. Because it fires double AP, both rounds get really nice shell normalization and is able to cut through a lot of angled armor much easier. So I really like the AMX M4, and it's easily a super strong tank. Now we come to the Foch 155, which is going to go into the good category. I'm disappointed with Wargaming in the Foch. They nerfed the tank for no reason, in my opinion. It used to be a 560 alpha with a 7.5 second interclip and 3,400 DPM, which was a really fantastic combo. It meant that you always had shells ready. Even if somebody tried to rush you, you always had DPM, because your first shell would have a 7.5 second interclip, and then your second shell would be the auto-loaded gun, so you'd have to reload the clip again. So you'd shoot one shell, which you loaded from the clip, then wait 7.5 seconds, shoot your second shell, then reload the clip and repeat. The clip reload is only like 12.5 seconds, which meant that you could literally just keep shooting and shooting and shooting, and it was very hard to deal with the Foch. Wargaming changed the tank to now where it has 500 damage per shot with a 155mm cannon. That's a joke. A joke! 155mm cannon, and it does 500 damage a shot? Really? That's stupid. I'm disappointed with the tank. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's great either. It's just a good tank now. I wouldn't really play it that much because I'm disappointed with how it plays. Next up, we have a vehicle that the majority of players do not have their hands on, and when I say the majority, I mean 99% of the Blitz community, and that is the Caro 45-ton, which, once again, makes it into the super strong. The Caro 45-ton is just fantastic. I mean, it's not an amazing tank. It's a good tank, but I wouldn't say, it's the most overpowered tank out there. There's some people out there that probably think it's broken. I don't think it is, because, sure, while the Caro does have a very nasty clip, 1,540 damage, if you dump all 4 shells, you got to keep in mind, the first shell takes 22 seconds to load in the clip. If you dump that, your DPM gets a quarter. I mean, it's terrible. Do not dump the first shell in the Caro. The second thing to keep in mind about the tank is while it may have 380 damage per shot, it also features 0.344 dispersion and a pretty poor aiming time, which means that it's one of the least accurate tier 10s. Actually, it's not one of the least accurate tier 10 mediums. It is the least accurate tier 10 medium in the game, which is awful. It's absolutely awful on that aspect. So, yeah, I like the tank. I think the gun is great. The DPM of 2,850 when you have your last shell loaded and then you eat into the clip and deal 380 damage a shot each shell is really nasty. But at the same time, it's not the best because you'll miss a lot of those shells while you're trying to dump into your opponents. I should also point out that the Caro has very poor armor, incredibly easy to penetrate with high explosives. So that's also another downside about the tank. I think it's a great vehicle. I think it's very fun to play, and I do agree that it should be in the super strong category. Now we have the TVP, which is going into the broken. The TVP is just amazing. It really is. The TVP has 1,240 damage in, 3.5 seconds? It's stupid. It's a 1.5 second interclip. So is that... It's 4.5 seconds. That's so stupid. It has 4 shells, 310 damage per shot, and a 1.5. So it goes boom, 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 boom. And there you go. That's all 4 shells. That's 1,240 damage. And the tank goes 60 kilometers per hour. Not only does it go 60, but it also has 8 degrees of gun depression, a really, really troll mantlet that you'll bounce half the time you shoot it, a really troll upper plate that you'll bounce half the time you shoot. The only part of the TVP that's really bad is the side armor. Its sides are like 50-40 mils thick. You'll penetrate the sides of the majority of tier 10s. As long as you get a flat side shot, it will always penetrate the side. In fact, yesterday on my TVP video, I HE clipped an entirety of an enemy TVP with my TVP and did 1640 and killed the tank instantly. I should also point out that the TVP with HE is probably the deadliest tank in tier 10. It has 440 damage or something like that, maybe 420 with each HE shell, which means you're going to deal 1680 damage with a clipper, something absolutely monstrous like that. You do not mess with the high explosive rounds of a TVP 5051. Overall, the tank is incredibly deadly, incredibly overpowered, and completely game-breaking in my opinion, so that's why it sits in the super strong category. We got 3 tanks left. Let's start off with the Progetto 65, which I'm going to put in the strong for now. I really like the Progetto. I think it's fantastic, and for my personal playstyle, I'd probably put it into super strong, but I feel like for the majority of players, it's a strong tank. I mean, even players like Fatness will say the tank needs a buff, and I don't actually think it needs any changes, but if I were to change something on the prog, I would just make the gun more accurate. That's all it really needs. I don't know why you would make the gun so inaccurate to begin with. That's really the main part of these types of tanks, especially mediums, is to be accurate. So if Wargaming just made the Progetto gun like .308 dispersion, I think it would be easily in the super strong category. Nothing else needs to be changed, just that, and it would be fine. So I guess we will see. One thing I should say about the prog is its upper plate actually got buffed in the latest update, making it a lot stronger. So very, very nice in that aspect about the Progetto 65. Overall, really solid tank, and I like it a lot, so not too bad at all. The final 2 tanks we have is the 60 TP and the Stritz Von K. The 60 TP is easily making its way into super strong. It's got everything going for it. It's got 7 degrees of gun depression, 42 kilometers per hour of a top speed if you're running both gear oil. It reverses at 1 kilometers per hour, which is absolutely insane for reverse speed. The tank has 600 damage per shot. If you're running tungsten, 700 damage per shot. The vehicle also has incredibly good upper plate armor, incredibly good hull down capabilities, a turret that you will never pen frontally unless you hit the hatch. And that's it. I mean, the tank has no downsides. Well, it has one downside, and that's called the rear of the tank on the turret, because you can just crap on it with the ammo rack. Yesterday, I full health ammo rack to 60 TP. They are still pretty easy to ammo rack. It's not as common, but you still see them get ammo rack from time to time. That is one downside of the tank that you will definitely notice a lot of times hurting it. But the 60 TP has everything going for it. I don't even need to really explain why it's so good. It's just an amazing tank. The final vehicle we have is the Stritz Von K, which is also finishing off in the super strong category. Stritz Von K is a tank that a lot of people doubted when I said was going to be a really, really good vehicle in testing. And it came out, and it's a really good tank. It's not only being used basically to dominate the comp scene right now, but it's also just incredibly strong because of the 3,500 and, 63 DPM the thing has? It's got insane DPM. Not only does it have insane DPM, but it's got really, really good mobility, going 45 kilometers per hour. If you're running super speed boost, actually, no, I think it's like 48 kilometers per hour. If you run super speed boost, you can get up to like 52 or 53 kilometers per hour, which it does have, by the way. Not only does it have super speed boost, but the tank has also got adrenaline, which I'm running on it, which allows it to just absolutely farm your opponents. The Stritz Von K has pretty troll armor on the turret and the hull. It's based off of a Kron hull and a Centurion 7-1 turret. So it's not the most armor, but it does get bounces here and there. Overall, it's a really good tank. It does take a bit of skill to drive, especially because it only has 350 damage a shot. You're essentially just driving a medium tank gun on a heavy, which is weird, but it works pretty well, so I can't complain all too much. The only real downside of the Stritz Von K is the pen, which is definitely on the lower side. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the entirety of this year's list. The entirety of everything you need to know about this year's tier list. There are a lot of tanks that we've gone over, and if you want to take a brief overview, this here is it. So I'll just slowly scroll. But this is the entire tier list. There are a lot of tanks this year, and I'm pretty happy and pleased with how I ranked all of these vehicles. Let me know if you agreed or disagreed with the tier list, but at the end of the day, if you'd like to see more like this, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.